is there anything more embarrassing than an older person using young people slang?
How do you do, fellow kids?
PM Anthony Albanese did it today when he dropped some Gen Z slang when slamming the coalition on their economic management.
They are delulu with no solulu, Mr. Speaker.
That means delusional with no solution, BTW. But was it a case of trying to be cool, or did those influences that Labor trucked into the budget lockup rub off on Albo? Now, Albo didn't quite use delulu correctly there. It's not the total insult that he thinks it is, but it's far from the most embarrassing thing a polly has done to appeal to the kids.
It is true that my political opponents have often made me see red. Often when subjected to the tortured poets who would rise to attack my reputation.
Yes, ScoMo's infamous Taylor Swift speech was bad, but not nearly as cringeworthy as this Fatima Payman Gen Alpha effort.
To the Sigmas of Australia, I say that this goofy-air government have been capping.
But if you want one of the all-time worst attempts at a politician trying to be cool, look no further than former Labor Minister Craig Emerson and this version of the Sky Hooks classic horror movie.
No Whyalla wipe out there on my TV. No Whyalla wipe out there on my TV. Shocking me right out of my brain. Shocking me right out of my brain.
Shocking indeed. Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers wasn't entirely sure about being depicted as the baby from a Nirvana album cover on the front page of the West Australian today.
Thanks, Treasurer.
I don't know about that front page today, Katina, with
What have you
me
got
as the
against
Nirvana
Nirvana?
cover was a bit confronting. So,
Katina Curtis, the West's federal politics editor. Jim Chalmers isn't a fan of Nirvana?
Look, he's more of a hip-hop fan, I think.
Well, obviously, he was feeling very confident about his budget and its chances of getting the Albanese government re-elected. How would you describe his mood today at the National Press Club?
Look, he was pretty buoyant, and not only because of the budget last night and those surprise tax cuts, but also just in the half hour before he turned up at the press club, the government actually rammed through the House the legislation for those tax cuts. I am told that Labor is surprised that the opposition came out straight away last night opposing them. They thought that they wouldn't be so stupid as to do that and, fall for the obvious wedge, but they did. And so Labor really doubled down on it by saying, well, okay, we're going to show every Australian how you are opposing this and you're voting against it in Parliament. So the legislation for that has gone through the House this morning in record time, just shy of 2 hours. And I think the plan is for them to try and at least put it to a vote in the Senate this afternoon. They don't really care, actually, if it doesn't get up in the Senate this afternoon. It's more about forcing the coalition to vote against it.
Yeah, well, in terms of a piece of strategy, let's unpack this a little bit further. So the government has surprised us all with these tax cuts in a budget that we all assumed, we'd got all the spoilers. There wasn't really much more new that we were going to get out of it. And then they have pushed this legislation into Parliament and got the opposition to vote against it. How much mileage does that give the Albanese government as we head towards this federal election campaign?
Look, it certainly gives them something pretty strong to campaign on by saying, they've already been road testing the line this morning. Peter Dutton stands for cuts for everything except to your tax bill. I think they're really counting on that resonating quite strongly with voters.
Volatile, unpredictable, and tariffs. 3 words Jim Chalmers used when handing down his budget on Tuesday night. And now, he didn't mention this person by name, but we all knew who he was talking about. He was, of course, talking about one Donald J. Trump.
The threat of a global trade war. The whole world has changed as a consequence.
There was one line you missed, Ben. Storm clouds were ahead as well in Jim Chalmers' budget. I mean, gosh, it was full of rhetoric without naming the American president, wasn't it? His fingerprints were all over it. This threat of a global trade war and how other nations will respond, what it means for the budget bottom line. And Treasury ran through some of the numbers and whether to retaliate or not. And overall, it was basically Jim Chalmers' way of saying, I don't know what the hell is going to happen.